A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on which part of the world you are from. I welcome you all to the first episode of the PAM Masterclass, which is our exclusive product training series, specifically designed for our customers using Manage Engine Password Manager Pro and PAM 360. This masterclass is intended to help you understand our PAM solutions in depth and how you can use them to address your everyday PAM use cases and challenges. I'm Srilekha, product consultant at Manage Engine and the host for the day. And I'm also joined by Damo, who's our in house PAM expert and the presenter of today's episode. So, before we begin, I'd like to take you all through a couple of housekeeping announcements. All the attendees here today will be muted by default, and there is a separate Q&A segment during the end of the session. Please remember that we'd like to keep this session as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions at any given point in time during the masterclass, please feel free to post them on the group chat or you can raise it on the Q&A panel as well. The session handouts, which include the session recording and the presentation deck, will be sent to you over an email. So please give us a couple of days to process them and we will be sending it to you by early next week. And if you have any feedback for us, or if you have any questions, or if you need any technical assistance with the product, you can always email us at the email ID that's displayed on screen. Now, coming to the agenda and schedule of the masterclass series, each session of the series will focus on one core PAM module, such as privileged account governance, privilege elevation, privilege session management, and more. And each of these sessions will happen on the second Thursday of every month. So please note that the masterclass sessions are intended for our customers using Password Manager Pro and PAM 360. And for demonstration purposes today, we will be taking you through the PAM 360 console. But please note that whatever we show you today, whatever configurations we make on PAM 360 today is also applicable for for Password Manager Pro customers as well. Now, without any further ado, I will hand the control over to Damo to get started with our topic of the day. Thank you.
Hi, a warm welcome to you all. Myself, Damo, the product consultant from Manage Engine PAM suite of products. I'm here to discuss the importance of privilege account management for any organization. So, before we begin, I would like to just trigger a quick poll to understand the audience here. I guess you will have a poll on your screen now. And the question is, do you rotate your enterprise passwords on a regular basis? I'm glad to see that around 70% of the audience voted as yes and 30% says no. Our main motto is to make sure that all our customers rotate their passwords periodically on a regular basis. That is our main motto. So, first of all, why do we need a privilege account governance for an organization? As per the recent survey conducted by Verizon, 70% of data breaches in the last 2 years have been because of an abuse of user privilege. Hackers use tactics such as phishing, unsecure websites, malware, social engineering, and so on to bypass the security parameters and navigate into the corporate network. Once inside, these hackers immediately scout for unmanaged privileged credentials and escalate themselves to a domain administrator status, which provides them with unrestricted access to the highly sensitive informations which we have in the system. Also, careless employees are a difficult threat to an organization. You may have come across colleagues dropping critical user credentials on, say, for example, like a work channels like Slack or Teams, which can be picked up by anyone with an ulterior intent. A typical example we can consider as a DevOps engineer dumping their codes, which contains authentication tokens, passwords on an open platform like GitHub and forgetting about them. So if these codes are picked up by a malicious ulterior intent hacker, then it would be a threat to an organization. Moreover, forgotten privileges are very, very dangerous for an organization. For instance, you may sometimes come across teams where employees with higher privileges might have left the company, but it might take your IT team some time to remove their privilege accounts from Active Directory and from the local administrative groups. So until that time, their privileges are very much valid. Anyone who has access to such orphan privilege accounts with no active user accounts can easily use these credentials to make a lateral movement inside your business and gather the sensitive information. And with this increasing number of hybrid workplace, it is mandatory to take stock of all the user privileges and ensure that only authorized users have elevated access to the system. In fact, even Gartner recommends taking a comprehensive approach towards zero standing privilege, which can be achieved by a comprehensive privilege account governance program. Speaking about privilege account governance program, we have like 5 crucial security control to ensure that all your privileged credentials and accounts are taken stock, and also they are stored under a centralized repository. The first one is to discover and vault the privileged accounts in your network. Second one is to ensure the strong password policy for all the accounts stored under the centralized repository. And the third one is to share the passwords securely to the users with role based access control. Fourth one, as we know, auditing is one of the most important functionality in privilege account governance to maintain all these identity related operations in the program. And last but not the least is to implement a good multi-factor authentication to allow users to access these privilege account passwords. Now, let's try to practically implement privilege account governance using PAM 360. Let's take a look at the user management part. Before that, I would like to give you a statement here that this is not only for PAM 360, even the customers who is using PAM Password Manager Pro can make use of the same functionality. Now let's take a look at the user management part. Users who needs access to the critical password stored in PAM 360 has to be onboarded in the product at first. So once they are onboarded, these users can make use of any of the readily available authentication mechanisms like Active Directory authentication, LDAP authentication, radius authentication, and so on. Once these users are onboarded, you can group them and make a bulk operations. The onboarded users has to be assigned with the right role in the product. So let's have a look into PAM 360 and look at the roles available first. So we have 6 different roles in PAM 360. First 3 being the most important role or the dominant role, which plays an administrative operations in PAM 360. The first guy here is a privileged administrator who will have access to manage the users, manage resource, manage password, view them all, and he will have access to the viewing the auditing functionality, make some privacy and security control. As you see, privacy and security control option is available only to the privileged administrator, where this administrator will be able to make options like IP restrictions. I want my users to access PAM 360 only from specific set of machines. So I can create an IP restriction and make sure that the users access it only from the specific host. The only difference between a privileged admin and admin will be this privacy and security control, which is not available for an admin. However, for a password administrator, the user management portion will not be available. As the name says, he's more of password related administrator. So he's going to manage the resource, passwords, and share it among the users who needs access to it. And the last 3 roles are the normal user roles or the end user roles, which can be assigned to the users who needs access to the tool. So for an example, password auditor, as the name says, he will be able to view the passwords which was shared to him. Also, he has access to view the auditing and reporting functionality available in PAM 360. Password user, again, he will have access to just view the passwords which was shared to them. And one important note here is PAM 360 works in the concept of ownership and sharing. So anything which was added by an administrator will be available only to him until he share it to another user or to another administrator. So just make a note of it that it works in the concept of ownership and sharing. Now let's quickly jump into the product and see how do we onboard the users in PAM 360. To onboard the user, all I need to do is jump into the users tab. Here, I have multiple options to onboard the users. Either I can add a user manually, add them from a file like a flat CSV file, or I can have them imported from Active Directory, Azure AD, or LDAP. Let's quickly have a look into how do we add a user manually. When I try to add a user manually, I have an option where I need to specify the first name, last name, and the username using which the user is going to log in. So once I specify these details, I need to specify the password for this user. So how am I going to provide a password? Suppose if I choose the first option, generate password, which means PAM 360 has a password generator which will generate a password and trigger it to the trigger it to the user who needs access to it to the email address specified here. Suppose I don't want that, I want the username as same as password, then I can go for use username as password and specify the other details and just click on save. So before you click on save, you need to know about the access scope available in while adding a user. When I make a user with password user role, which means the user can just own the resources which was shared to him. However, if I make him as an administrator, then there is an option called all passwords, which means if I enable this option, which means I'm creating an administrative user with super admin permission. Just before we have discussed about the sharing permission and the ownership permission. If I make someone as a super admin, any passwords added by any administrator will be available for this user. So super administrator is nothing but a break glass account which can be used when there is an absence of an administrator, because as we stated, it works in the concept of ownership and sharing. So if you make an admin as a super admin, which means he gets access to all the resources available in PAM 360. So I just want to make sure that he's a normal user. So I'm bringing back to the password user and clicking on save. So once I click on save, the new user is created. Now let's have a look at the next option, which is add API user. So why do we need an API user here? So we need to perform an operation where I need to retrieve a password through an API call and have that stored somewhere else. So in order to make it not only retrieving a password, an API user can perform multiple operations like retrieving a password, creating a resource, sharing the resource to another user. Likewise, the API user can perform multiple operation. So here I need to provide the username for the API user and the host name from which the API call will be executed. So here it is a security field. So whatever host name which I'm going to provide, only from that specific host, the user has to make an API call. If it is executed from a different machine, then PAM 360 will not allow them to retrieve the password or to make any operation. So you can ask me what is the authentication mode here. So you have to enable REST API. Once you enable REST API, you have the auth token generated. This is the auth token which you have to copy it and use it whenever you execute an API call. So that helps you add an API user in PAM 360. Once imported, I do have an option to have my users imported from a flat CSV file. I don't want to add my users manually. Instead, I can just go for importing my users from a flat CSV file. To import it, I just need to select the file, click on next. Here I have an option where I need to map the fields in the CSV file with the columns we have in PAM 360. So here first name being the first name, last name being the last name, username being the username, and I just specify the email address, department, and just click on finish. One second. Okay, just click on finish, which will onboard all the users in PAM 360. And the most important thing during this user onboard process will be this import from Active Directory. Most of our PAM 360 customers are from the Windows environment. As we know, PAM 360 can be installed as an on-premises solution either on a Windows device or on a Linux device. So most of the customers who have Windows as an operating system will go for importing the resources from an Active Directory. To import the resource from Active Directory, all I need to do is provide the NetBuyer's name of my domain controller and the primary and secondary domain controller details. The reason why we always recommend our customers to provide the secondary domain controller is to make sure that even if the primary domain controller is down, the secondary domain controller will serve the users to log into the tool. Here we make use of WMI and RPC as a connection mode. It is a Windows native protocol which is used to connect to the devices, which is used to connect to Active Directory and onboard the devices. I'm sorry, onboard the users. So here we make use of a connection mode. Either you can go for an SSL or a non-SSL. Suppose if you would like to go for an SSL connection, then you have to import your domain controller's certificate in PAM 360. Then I'm just going to provide the username and password which has permission, and then just click on fetch groups and OUs, which will enumerate the list of groups and OUs present inside my domain. Let me just grab the password for it. Okay, so to do the import from Active Directory, I just need to provide the credential here and just click on fetch groups and OUs, which will enumerate the list of groups and OUs present inside my domain. I just need to find out a group from where I wanted to onboard my users from. Just click on import. It will import all the users part of the group which I have imported. Not only this, during this AD synchronization, you might have noticed an option called synchronization interval. It is nothing but, so for example, I have tried to import a user group named test group 3. In that group, currently I have only 10 users. Just in case if there is any newly added user, if I have the synchronization scheduled, like for example, one day, every one day PMP or PAM 360 will try to connect to your Active Directory and find out if there is any newly added resource or an user part of that specific group which we have imported. And if it finds one, the user will get automatically onboarded in PAM 360. The next one is to import the users from Azure Ready. Let me grab the password for it so I can show you. To onboard the users from Azure Ready, click on import from Azure Ready. Provide the domain name of your Azure Ready. You might have created an application app on your Azure Ready. Provide the client ID of it. Just choose the authentication mechanism. Either it is an user access token or app only access token. If it is user access token, we make use of Azure AD Graph to make a communication to your Azure AD. However, if it is an app only token, we make use of Microsoft Graph API. So recently, Microsoft has also informed that user access token will not be supported anymore. They are planning to deprecate it. So going forward, the only option would be to go with app only access token. So once you provide in the username password, like we had in Active Directory authentication, we have an option to provide the synchronization schedule here. Click on fetch groups, which will enumerate the list of groups we have. Pick up a group from where you wanted to onboard your users from. Just click on import, which will onboard all the users from your Azure AD. Now, the last but not least, we have an option to onboard the users from LDAP. Mostly when customers install PAM 360 on a Linux-based environment, they do not have an option to communicate with Active Directory. So the only option is to go with Azure AD or from LDAP. So mostly customers will go for LDAP authentication. So I have these details pre-filled here. So let me take you to admin LDAP LDAP server details. Okay, so these are the details which we have to provide. I need to provide my primary URL, and it makes use of port 389. Suppose if you're going for an SSL, then the port differs. You have to provide 638 here, and then the username and password which is used here. So the username should be in the distinguished name format. Type in the password, provide the base DN and the search filter. Search filter is nothing but object class equal to star will be the common search filter for all the users. So I am using that. So once I click on save, the details will be imported. Just click on import from LDAP and it will onboard all the users in users tab. So once they are onboarded, you will be able to log into PAM 360 using the credentials with using the AD credentials or LDAP credential from which you have imported your users from. So now we have seen how to onboard the resources and make them log into the tool. Now, how do we make sure that the authentication is completely secure? To make sure, we always recommend our customers to go through a two-factor authentication. We support out of the box two-factor authentications listed on the screen like phone factor, RSA Secure ID, Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, Okta Verify, and so on. Suppose if you're not willing to schedule any one of this, and if you would like to go for the one-time password sent through email option, yes, you can even go for it. Here, when you try to enable this option, you can either pick a specific user, or you can have it scheduled for all the users, or you can even schedule it for a single user using this option. So once this is enabled, the users has to go through two-factor authentication. And suppose if you would like to disable the two-factor authentication, just click on this and click on save, which will disable two-factor authentication for all your users which we have onboarded from AD or Azure AD or from LDAP. So that covers the user management portion. Now let's jump into the user group management. Under user group management, we have an option. So remember, we tried to onboard the group users from a group called test group 3. And we have also created a synchronization interval as 1 day. So now any users part of this group will be available here when you click on associate. So I have imported only one user from that group. So it shows that. Suppose during the next Active Directory synchronization, if there is a new user added in Active Directory, then that user will get automatically onboarded and he will be readily available here to log into the tool. Likewise, we also have an option to manually add a group just by specifying the group name, and you can just go ahead and pick the users whom you wanted to be a part of this group and just click on add to group. Now a group is created and we named it as test static. Here we also have few options like user group privileges, where I can say like I want the users part of this group to be able to manage personal passwords, export the passwords. We have list of options which can be configured in the group level. So that covers the user management portion. Now let's jump into the resource management. First of all, let's understand what a resource is before we jump into the resource management portion. A resource is nothing but a container which contains a password. So for an example, a Windows device or a Linux machine, or even you can take a network firewall, can be considered as a resource. Or you can even say a website account can be considered as a resource in PAM 360 since it has a password. To add a resource in PAM 360, we have different mechanism like we did it in the user management portion. We also have different mechanism. Either you can add them manually or import them from a file or from KeePass, or you can also go with the schedule based discovery process. Now let's jump in back to the product and have a look at how do we discover the resources and how do we add them. There are multiple ways to add the resources. The first one is to add the resource manually. You can ask me why do we need to add a resource manually. So for an example, we have a Windows, let's consider a Windows environment. A Windows environment might contain domain member servers which are connected to domain. There are workgroup machines which are not connected to domain. There are missions which are beyond the DMZ zone or in a or between a firewall. So workgroup missions cannot be discovered using the WMI connectivity or anything because they are not part of the domain. To add the workgroup mission, you can just type in the resource name, IP address. Since I said it is a workgroup mission and it is a Windows, I'll go with Windows. But let me just show you the list of resource type you can add it here. You can add Windows, Windows domain, Linux, HP Unix device, IBM device. All these things can be considered as a resource. So just provide these details and click on save and proceed. Before that, we have an option called password policy. It is one of the most important thing in the privilege account governance. So we have to make sure that we provide a strong password policy to make sure the passwords are completely secure. So once I click on save and proceed, it is going to ask me to type in the local username and password. So let me just type in my local account passwords and click on add. So this adds the local account here, and once I click on save, a resource is created manually. Suppose I don't want it to create my resources manually, I have them all in a flat CSV file. I can very well go ahead and click on import from file, browse for the file, select the file which from where I wanted to onboard my resources from, click on open, next. Here I have to map in the fields in CSV with the columns we have in PAM 360. So I have resource name as resource name, DNS name as DNS name, a resource type as resource type, and I can also say user account and password. So once I provide these details, the last option we have here is if you're trying to import already existing resource, PAM 360 will not import them by default. The reason being, we do not allow the duplication in PAM 360. So if we just select override and click on finish, then those resources will get automatically onboarded. If I just try to do a refresh, you can see all the resources are onboarded from the CSV file. Now, the next option is to onboard the resources from a KeePass environment. Suppose if you're using KeePass and if you would like to import those passwords in PAM 360, you can very well export them out in a KDBX file format from your KeePass database and provide that KDBX file and master password to import them in PAM 360. To do it, click on import from KeePass, browse for the KDBX file which you have exported from your KeePass, and then just type in the password, the master password, and click on import now. It will import all your devices, or it will import all the KeePass database details here. I mean the resources from your KeePass database here. So the most important thing in the discovery part is the discover resources. Mostly we will be discovering the resources instead of having them manually added. Now let's go ahead and look at how we are going to do this. First, we are going to look at Windows discovery. So if it is a Windows discovery, which means we are going to discover the domain member servers on your network. So what is domain member servers? The servers are machines which is connected to the domain. We call it as domain member machines or domain member servers. So all I need to do is provide the primary and secondary domain controller details. Even if primary is down, the secondary will help you out to do the discovery process. Again, we have an connection mode, non-SSL and SSL. If you would like to go for an encrypted way, then you can go for an SSL, and you have to import the primary domain controllers certificate on PAM 360 before you do this import. And again, I have to just provide my administrative credentials here and then click on fetch groups and OUs, which will onboard the list of groups and OUs. Let me just grab the password and show you how it looks. So all I need to do is provide an account which has a read write permission on my Active Directory. And one more prerequisite here is, as I said, we make use of Windows native WMI and RPC protocol to make sure the account to connect to Active Directory. And also we need to make sure that we are using an account which has either a domain admin permission or a local admin permission on your Active Directory or in the missions, on the missions in which we are going to onboard the devices from. And then just click on fetch groups and OUs, which will enumerate the list of groups and OUs. Now I'm going to pick the same group which I have used there and click on import, which will import the resources part of this specific group. As you see, there are three missions imported: Win10, Win8, and Win8 temp. Let's jump in back to resources tab and see if the resources are imported along with the local accounts. So during this discovery process, we not only discover the local accounts, we also discover the service accounts. So look at here, there is a new resource type discovered during this discovery process, and it would be of your domain name space domain controller. So when you click on it, you will be able to see all the service accounts running on those three machines. Let me consider the first account. So when I click on it, I see that it is running on two different machines, PMP-Win8 and PMP-Win10. And it is used to run nearly 6 different services. Active services, these are the active services. So PAM 360 is not only performing the local account discovery, it is also going to help you out in finding the active service accounts on your domain. Once upon finding it, you will be able to perform password reset for the service accounts. When you perform a password reset, we have an option whether you wanted to perform password reset on the services console alone or you wanted to do a restart also. So if you have this option checked, by default, we will not have this checked. If you would like to perform a password reset on the services console and also restart the service, then have this option checked and then do a password reset. So PMP or PAM is intelligent enough to connect to the both machines and perform password reset on the services console. So that's how the Windows discovery part works. So when it comes to Linux discovery, we make use of SSH or Telnet as a remote connection mode to do the discovery. So I'm just going to try showing you a device to discover. So I have already created a discovery profile here. So all you need to do is click on add profile and provide a username and password which has a remote login permission along with the user prompt. So for an example, I have a test user. Once I log in with this user, I'll get this prompt. So I have to provide the details. And if this test user already has a sudo permission, like an admin kind of permission, then I can go for use sudo option. Or if I wanted to elevate the permission, then I have to use a root account or an account which has root permissions on it. So provide those details. I have already created a discovery profile here. So I'm just going to click on save and do the discovery part. So when I click on discovery, it will give you a pop-up whether you would like to notify your administrators or to a specific users. If you don't want any notification, uncheck and click on proceed so that the devices will get discovered. And once you click on it, you will be able to see if there is any device discovered. So for an example, if you try to discover it from an IP address range, you will have more than like 100 missions here. So you can pick on which resources you need to be added in the resources tab, pick them individually and click on add selected resources, which will add the resources in the resources tab. So this is the resource which we have discovered. When I click on it, I see all the local accounts underneath that mission is also discovered. So this is how the discovery process for Linux works. Now let's jump into network devices. For network devices, we make use of SNMP as a protocol to do the discovery. As same as this Linux discovery, we have to add a profile here. But here, SNMP has three different versions: version 1, version 2, and version 3. Version 3 being the latest version. So when you go for version 1, you need to provide the SNMP port and the read community value, which your network administrators might have. A read community value is nothing but it is a kind of user ID or password which will be sent along with the SNMP protocol. And once it reaches out to the machine and the authentication is successful, the machine sends out with the vendor details. So for an example, if I try to discover a Palo Alto device, the machine responds back stating that it is a Palo Alto device. So for this, we need to make use of the read community value. So if I would like to go for version 3, I need to provide username, authentication protocol, authentication password for it, privilege protocol, and other details to do this discovery. However, for VMware discovery, we make use of vSphere API. We need to create a profile using vCenter API username and password. To do that, click on Add Profile, type in the vCenter's API username and password here, and then just add the profile and then just specify the host name or the IP address range from which you would like to onboard your resources from and click on discover. So here we are going to discover only the VMware ESXi host available on your VMware API. So the next one here is AWS discovery. To do the AWS discovery, let me grab the secret. So to do the AWS discovery, all we require is we are going to discover and add all the virtual desktops from your Amazon workspace. You have to specify the region here, and then the host name or like a task name. Provide the access key and the secret key, and then just click on discover, which will discover all the resources which you have in that specific thing. So once you see this, you will be able to see that the AWS task name is discovered, and you will be able to see the list of missions which are discovered. So just pick the resources which you would like to add in PAM. Just click on add selected resources. Jump in back to the resources tab. You will be able to see those AWS resources are discovered. So once these resources are discovered, you will be able to share them with the specific users and other operation. So now we have seen how do we discover the resources from different mediums like Azure from Windows, Linux, network devices, VMware, and AWS. Now let's jump into the sharing permission. So what is sharing? Why do we need to do a sharing permission here? Sharing is nothing but, as informed, PAM 360 or password manager works in the concept of ownership and sharing. So any resources added in PAM 360 will not be available to another administrator or to another user. So here comes the sharing permission, which is one of the privilege account governance program. So now to share the resource, I have three levels of sharing: resource level, account level, and group level. Suppose if I like to do a resource level sharing, all I need to do is navigate to resources tab, click on the resource action button next to the resource, and then say share with user. So now I have an option to share it to the user who needs access to it. So look at here, I have an administrative user for whom I'll be able to provide different sets of permissions like remote only, view, modify, and full access. However, if I try to share it to a password user, the maximum permission will be modified. So always remember that a maximum permission which you can provide it to a password user or to a password auditor will be the modify permission. However, for password administrators or for administrators, you will be able to provide all four permissions available here. The disadvantage of sharing from resource level is, so let's consider this revise. It has multiple accounts, nearly 15 accounts it has. So if I share a single resource to a user, which means I'm giving him access to all 15 passwords underneath the resource. How do I make sure that I wanted to share a single account? For that, I need to go for the account level sharing. To share it from the account level, I can even pick the accounts which I would like to share. Click on more actions, share, share with the user or with the user group, and then I should be able to provide them with the required permissions. So here the maximum permission which I can provide to password user again will be modified. Even for administrators, the maximum permission will be modified. You will not be able to provide full access permission. Only in the resource level you will be able to provide full access permission to the administrator. However, in the account level you will be able to provide the maximum permission of modify for the administrator. Now we have seen how to share the resources to the administrators and users with required level of permission. But the thing is, how do we share the resources to the users in bulk? To do that, I have to go for group level sharing. Here under group level sharing, I have an option to add a group. So first, let's see how to add a group. Then we'll go for the sharing on group level. So when I click on add group, I have an option to create a static group and dynamic group. Static group is more of pick individually kind of group. So when I try to create it, I can just pick my resources which I would like to add in this specific group. Just click on add to group so that there is a group created with the required number of users. Sorry, required number of resources on it. So once the resources are created, I should be able to click on the actions button next to the specific group. Click on share with user or with the user group and have the resource group shared to the user or user group. So when I try to share it with the user group, you might come up with a question: what happens if this user group has both administrative as well as the normal user? Which permission will it apply? So when I try to grant full access permission, if there is an admin user, they will get the full access permission. And if there are any normal user, the maximum permission which they will get will be the modify permission. So we have seen how to add the group and how do we share it to the user. Now let's look at a dynamic group. Dynamic group is more of criteria based group. So I need to provide a criteria to group my resources under a roof. To do that, I'm going to say resource type contains and Windows. So when I say this and click on search, it is going to bring in all the Windows devices I have. So you can see that it also brings in the Windows domain resources, which is nothing but my domain controller. I want only my Windows devices, then I can go for resource type equals Windows, then it will list me only the Windows devices. You can also drill down with more options here, like user account does not contain admin. So I want to group my resources which does not contain any admin account. I would just want normal user accounts on this group. Then if I click on search, it will list me only the normal user accounts which I have. Then I can just click on save, which creates a group which can be shared to the users who needs access to it. So that completes the sharing options we have in PAM 360. So let me jump in back and let's do a quick recap on whatever we have discussed today. We have seen how to discover the resources and accounts in PAM 360. We have seen how what are all the different types of roles available in PAM 360 and how to assign them with a specific set of roles. We have seen about the password policies, and we have also discussed on providing a strong password policy for resources, and we have seen how to share the resources with the users who needs access to it. And as discussed, multi-factor authentication we always recommend our customers to go with. So I hope the session was helpful. We have few useful product literature, help guides, and how-to videos. And if you have any questions or queries, you can feel free to drop us an email on the email address provided on the screen. In today's session, we have seen how to implement privilege account governance using Manage Engine PAM solution. In the next episode, we'll take a deeper look on how you can share resources at a more granular level, like based on user roles, policies, and more. And we will also explore Manage Engine's PAM privilege elevation capabilities, including just-in-time controls and self-service elevation option. Now the floor is open for Q&A. If you have any questions on today's topic or an implementation process, please feel free to post your questions on the chat or on the QA panel. Okay, so I see there is a question. What if we delete an admin user? Will all the passwords be deleted that were added by that admin? First of all, we do not allow deletion of user. I mean, a deletion of admin user if he owns any resources until the resources are transferred to another administrator. So it is not at all possible to delete that user. When you try to delete, it will give you a pop-up stating that you have to transfer the ownership before deleting it, and the option to delete will be grayed out. So that is not possible, and that's a very good question. I would like to see how to do a LDAP resource discover, but specify only specific LDAP resource during the import. That's why I can import only certain users in my AD. So it completely depends on the search filter you're going to provide. So when you try to do a, let me show you. So when I try to group my provide a search filter as object class equal to star, which means any resources, any users who has the property object class equal to star will be uh, imported. Suppose if I say a specific criteria object class equal to that username, something like that, then that specific user alone will get onboarded. We will also share you an email with the list of search filter can be used that might help you out. What is the difference between PMP and PAM? In PMP, which is more of privilege access management, whereas in PAM, we are going to look at the integrations with other manage engine products. We have more user analytics. So let me show you the list of modules we have in PAM. Here we have just-in-time elevation, privilege session monitoring, smart overflow automations, So the user behavior analytics is not available in Password Manager Pro. So I would say PAM 360 is a combined product of Password Manager Pro, Access Manager Plus, and Key Manager functionalities. All these things combined together a product called PAM 360. In future, anything related to session management or anything will be available only in PAM 360 and not in password management. So only things which is related to password management will be available in PAM 360 going forward. So anything related to session management or user behavior analytics will be available only in our PAM 360. How can I change the service account password? That's a good question again. So as we discussed during the Windows discovery, all your service accounts will get discovered underneath the resource type called Windows domain. So once they are discovered, all you need to do is click on account action and change password. However, there are few prerequisites. You need to configure remote password reset for this Windows domain. So click on resource action button next to that specific domain controller and click on configure remote password reset. Here you have to provide an account which has permission to perform password reset. So it can either be a domain admin account or an account which has permission to perform password reset. Provide an account, click on save, go to the services, go back to that account, click on account actions, click on change password, generate a password which should generate a strong password in PAM, then just click on save. However, how do I make sure that these passwords are resetted on the services console? Just go to edit and make sure the option reset is checked here so that PAM 360 will find out the services and it will perform password reset and restart the service as well, just in case if this option is checked. Does transfer ownership reset the permission for the resource under that user? Not really. Transferring the ownership. So, for an example, I wanted to share a specific ownership alone. Then I can click on the resource action button next to the specific resource and click on transfer ownership and share it to the user to whom I wanted to transfer the ownership of this specific resource I'm talking about. However, the sharing permissions on the resource will still be applicable and there will not be any changes to it. No. Is PMP going to be decommissioned? No. We will. We do not have any plans to decommission Password Manager. It will still have all the password management functionalities, and there are going on in Password Manager as well. To be honest, Password Manager is our revenue generating product as well. So we do not have any plans on decommissioning Password Manager Pro.
Also, to add to that question, Password Manager Pro and PAM 360 PAM solutions are intended for customers with different PAM maturity levels. So, if you're only looking for a password management solution that has an additional set of features like session management, auditing, and more, yes, Password Manager Pro will be your best fit. However, if you're looking for a solution with a slightly higher, the probably even the highest PAM maturity, then we would definitely recommend PAM 360 because it has all the access control related features like JIT, self-service privilege elevation, and enterprise integration with IT management tools like UEBA, business intelligence, and with RPA tools and all your orchestration workforce. So to answer to that question, no, PMP will not be decommissioned anytime in future. It only depends on what your requirement is with respect to our PAM solutions.
How can I make sure Let me read it again. How can I make sure from PMP if service account password was reset? Yes. When you perform a password reset, you just need to put a check mark here and click on service accounts. And if you go to this tab, service account status, you will be able to see the status here, whether the password reset is done or not, and what was the time frame. All these details will be available. So whenever you try to perform a password reset, jump in back to services and see this status. You will be able to see whether password reset for that service account is success or not. How can I make sure from PMP if service account? Okay, I guess we have answered that. Would there be a reason for service account password aren't discovered during the initial discovery process? I discovered my resources, but I'm not able to discover the service accounts. If you have discovered the resources, kindly check whether the local accounts were discovered, because even if there is no WMI connectivity, or the account which you have used to discover the service, the account which you have used to do the Windows domain does not have a permission, then there are chances the service account might not discover. Also, the one more prerequisite is make sure that you're running Password Manager Pro or PAM 360 service using a domain account which either has domain admin permission or local admin permission on your end user machines. So that should do this service account discovery. And if you have any issues with the service account discovery, kindly drop us an email and we will be glad to assist you. What is the difference between privileged administrative user and a super administrator? As we discussed earlier, we have 5 different roles called administrator, password administrator, privilege administrator. These are the predefined roles. These users will have access to the resources which they have onboarded or which was shared to them. So for example, privilege admin will have access to the resources which either he has onboarded or which was shared to him. However, super administrative user is someone who will have access to all the resources created by anyone. Suppose if I want to make this admin user as a super admin, I can go to edit resource and click on all passwords in the system and click on save, where he might get a star icon next to his name which denotes that he is a super admin. And if you log in as this user, you should be able to see that all the resources added by any admin will be available for him, and this should be used only on a break glass situation. So kindly make sure that you have this as a break glass account. So when there is an admin who is not in an organization, and if you would like to retrieve a password during that specific period of time, upon approval from your higher management, make use of this account and log into the tool to retrieve the passwords. Is there any easy migration path from PMP to PAM with all setting permissions and resources? Yes, it is very much possible. All you need to do is download a ppm file. It is just like we perform an upgrade. You need to download a ppm file and do the upgrade, which will migrate from PMP to PAM 360. However, just make sure that before you migrate to PAM 360, you have the PAM license, because Password Manager Pro license will not be applicable on the PAM installation. If required, we will also share these informations over the email. How can I rotate website account passwords via PMP? Unfortunately, it is not possible to rotate the website account passwords directly from PAM 360. However, if there is an password reset plugin, you should be able to do it. So you can try using this functionality, which is under customization. You can go to password reset plugin and try to create a custom class plugin and do that. Maybe if you could share us the email with the required website and other details, we will check with the developers and let you know the possibilities on it. In a Linux resource was added from polling AD and is tied into an AD account that did the discovery. Does it need to be deleted and manually re-added to allow connections with the root account instead of the AD account mentioned? Let me understand the question once again. Not really. You don't have to delete them. All you can do is just click on the. So suppose this is a Linux device which is discovered as Windows during the discovery process. Click on this resource action next to it. Click on edit resource and change the resource type to Linux and click on save. So that should be enough. So whenever you do any password reset or any other functionality, we're going to just look at the current resource type which you have. So that should be sufficient. There shouldn't be any problem with password reset or verification option. Okay, so we have now reached the end of the session. We have few more questions coming in. We will get in touch with you soon. Alternatively, we request you to reach out to us over the email specified on the screen. Thanks again for participating in today's session. I hope the session was helpful. We look forward for your participation in the second episode as well. And cheers and have a great day, guys.